are those who are eligible for it, orphans, vulnerable persons, not able-bodied persons. These persons also, and others, of course, have access to counselors, probation and welfare officers, access to labor officers, a child protection agency with so many officers, persons suffering from domestic violence. Of course, there are persons who you can talk to, all free of cost. Even in the hinterland, and I know that some persons would talk about the hinterland have no one, but you can easily take it to the Toshao or any of the counselors attached to the village, and they would access the necessary service. So they're not left out. Of course, it's very expensive for transportation in many instances, and there is need for improvement. We often get confused with looking at others and experiencing the royal runaround due to procedures and processing time. But let me say this, that do not detract from the actual receipt of the benefit. Sometimes these things do happen. And what I would like to advocate is that the powers that be need to look at these areas very urgently and make some changes. Because some of the procedures indeed are long drawn out, time consuming factors. And when we're talking about persons, vulnerable persons, badly in need of cash or kind, and they have to go around in circles to get it, my God, they're already stressed out with whatever they're going through. And then for them to just have to go and go and go again to whichever office, it's very difficult. I am hoping that this situation, which have been ongoing for a number of years, do change. We need that change. And this change is very, very important, because oftentimes you would hear persons saying, I prefer not to go. Or when I do go, they tell me things that I do not understand. Or somebody spoke unkindly to the individual. Those are areas which need to change. Of course, we're dealing with human beings. Excuse me. And as such, when we're dealing with that, you know, excuse me, officers themselves have issues. Not that they should take it to work, but they too can have access to all these counselors and so on, and help themselves instead of taking it out on the poor person going there. There are other areas, and quite a few probably, that others may be aware of, that need a lot of improvement. For example, one area that really need improvement is our age, pensionable age. Right now, what we have is an age from 55 years to 65 years. And this is something, I don't want to use the word ridiculous, but often you come off at 55, you have to wait 5 years more to get a pension from NIS, which is at 60. And then another long drawn out 5 years before you can reach to 65 to get the other pension, the government pension. What can be done? Something needs to be done so that when the person come off at 55, they can get all their benefits at the same time. Their standard of living don't need to drop just because they have become a retiree. And of course, with less cash that is going to happen, or they have to seek employment somewhere else. That shouldn't be, because when the person retired, they would have given over 33 and a third years of service, and they need to enjoy um, their pension. Another area that I have looked at is the survivor's benefit being offered by NIS. It's a very good benefit, because whenever a spouse or partner in receipt of old age pension passed away, the survivor, and again, this don't have gender involved, not like the man passed away and the woman only would receive the pension, or vice versa. No, it's the survivor and the deceased. You receive half of the pension, which is very, very good. The other aspect, which is not really good, is this don't happen with the survivor who is earning or is in receipt of a pension. Then, as the law stand, they are not qualified for that benefit. In my opinion, they are qualified because they're due for it, whether spouse or partner. And it's debatable, of course, and we can take it to a different level. But I'm hoping that there would be enough persons who would advocate for this thing to be changed, because it's not, it has been ongoing for a number of years now. And I think that it's time for it to change, so that when the man, for example, if you have a teacher, both persons were teaching, husband and wife, and one of them passed away, the wife would be entitled to all the benefits because she have been working all the years, and the man the same thing. But one passed, and the other would only have whatever is his or her benefits based upon their years of teaching. But what happened with the ones that dead with the spouse or partner? I think it's time for it to be changed. Overall, our social benefits are easily accessible to most once the need arises. And what is most important in the Guyana scenario is that it is not gender-based. Once you fulfill the criteria, which have nothing to do with gender, you're entitled to the benefit. No person is being left out. We all have equal rights. We all have equal opportunities. And that has been ongoing for a number of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. You raised a few interesting points there, and I'm sure persons are going to want to discuss this. But I want you to hold your questions until after we complete the next speaker and we go into question time. I'm going to ask you to jot those burning questions down on a piece of paper so that you don't forget what you want to ask. I know you touched on the issue of the gap between retirement age and the time that you actually get to pension. And I know if we've got any actuaries in our audience, that they will be they'll be willing to work the numbers and show you why that is. Okay, so our next speaker is none other than the representative from the UN Women Multicultural Office, Ms. Toni Brodber. She couldn't be here in person, so she sent a message because, of course, Diana, she says, is very important to UN Women Caribbean. Prior to her appointment in 2020, of August 2020, she served as deputy representative in 2015 to 2020 with the MCO office. And prior to that, she served as a gender specialist for United Nations Development Program in South Africa. And she also served briefly with the UN South Africa Multicultural Office before the Caribbean established an office in Haiti. She received her first degree from the University of the West Indies, and she has a postgraduate degree in development studies and business administration from the London School of Economics. Ms. Broadwell is engaged also in raising 2 sons along with her husband. Give me a couple of minutes. Let me set up the screen for sharing. Thank you. Welcome, Ernestine.
National Day. My name is Connie Broadburn, and I'm the representative for the UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean.
Could you let me know if you're hearing?
We are hearing, but someone need to be muted. Their microphone is giving a feedback.
Okay, I will. Great. Good to know the technology is working today. Right, go ahead.
I am not hearing.
Renata, if you do not, you got to share your sound.
Considering that the lake receives 100 million tons of sediment yearly, you can imagine what this sediment can do.
Renata, we're not hearing it.
Renata, we're not hearing anything.
That is technical difficulties. We're coming up just now. Patience, of course.
As a representative for the UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean, and while Happy International Women's Day. My name is Connie Broadburn, and I'm the representative for the UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean. And while I could not be in Guyana this evening to be with you in person, nor could any of our other colleagues, I did think it was important for us to share these remarks, given the importance of Guyana to UN Women's portfolio and mandate, but also the importance of the theme of social protection. Access to social protection benefits is essential for every society, as throughout each human being's lifetime, each person will find themselves in a position of vulnerability, often unexpected, and then of course the vulnerability that comes with age. Social protection benefits are meant to lift vulnerable populations out of poverty and prevent people from falling back at the first shock, support well-being and facilitate taking opportunities to equitably participate in our economy and labor force at a greater rates. Social protection relates to the policies and programs that are aimed at protecting people against poverty, vulnerability, and social exclusion over the course of their lives. Beyond social assistance and income support, social protection is multifaceted, and it includes universal access to health care, paid parental leave, child benefits, disability benefits, social assistance, pensions, national insurance, as well as skills development and job access. Again, those things that address our needs when we're in situations of vulnerability, whether caused by unemployment or aging. Yet across our communities, countries, and in fact entire regions, a critical issue is often overlooked, and that is the role of social protection and social benefits in achieving gender equity. Have you considered that while we all benefit from social protection, who in our society are amongst the most impacted by poverty, and as such, primarily in need of more robust social protection and benefits, both in everyday life and when it is amplified through unprecedented social, environmental, and health shocks. The answer often is women. Inequality relates to the equal valuing by society of the similarities and differences of women and men to enjoy the same rights, resources, opportunities, and protections. Gender equity, though similar, is distinct, and it relates to the fairness in how women and men are treated according to their respective needs. And this may include equal or different treatment, but treatment that ensures equivalency in terms of the rights, benefits, obligations, and opportunities that should be afforded to each human being. The latest data from 2020 reveals that an estimated additional 47 million women and girls will be driven into extreme poverty due to the pandemic, increasing the total number of women and girls living in extreme poverty to 435 million. Of great concern, our Caribbean region continues to experience a persistent rise in natural hazards that undermine our very existence and intrinsically triggers the need for increased social protection systems and benefits that are shock and gender responsive. Post disasters or post a hazard, the burden of unpaid care typically falls on women. And this is amplified in times of crises. And in turn, women need to have greater, fairer, and easier access to social protection and its subsequent benefits. Guyana, in particular, also suffers from increasing impacts of climate change. One example being the major flooding events in 2005, which impacted over 270,000 people and spurred the government to invest more heavily in developing disaster risk management capacity and systems. But of course, we don't need to go as far back as 2005, given the widespread flooding of 2021, which impacted many people in Guyana. While we acknowledge social protection must be entrenched in the fabric of our Caribbean cultures and economies, in the context of how it relates to gender equity, we must acknowledge the ongoing biases within our social protection systems and policies. We have to critically reflect and act to reduce the challenges that these biases may pose in terms, as we did before, of actualizing the universal human rights of all and recognizing the distinct barriers that certain people, including women and girls, may face based on these barriers. And finally, how in turn this stymies our commitment to realizing the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals here in the region, and of course in each country. How do we rectify this? We rectify this by transitioning to fair and gender responsive social protection systems that are also shock responsive. This addresses the entrenched gender inequalities and norms that drive differences in women and men's lives as well as their well-being. And this has to recognize that throughout life changes, the vulnerabilities and risks women and girls experience vary and increase. And we say this in plain speaking. When we look at that unpaid work that women and girls in our region said, women said increase for them at 2 times the rate that men said it increased for them. And we're talking about the cooking, the child care, the care of the elderly. That's often invisible work that sometimes our social protection systems don't acknowledge. Yesterday, we officially commemorated International Women's Day 2022 under the theme of Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. And we continue to call upon all CARICOM member states to put gender equality at the forefront of revamping national social protection in order to bridge the gender gaps that persist. To achieve this, UN Women encourages you to define, identify, design, and develop overarching frameworks for strategies to reduce bias and increase gender-specific responses to risks and vulnerabilities. look at the gender mainstreaming of programming and policies, and to implement effective mechanisms for monitoring, evaluation, and accountability. Turning the tide of social protection and benefits being undermined by gender inequality will require a multi-dimensional approach to research, policy, programming, physical infrastructure, decent pay, livelihoods, and a cultural shift in attitude to redistribute inequalities amongst women. When we consider this year's International Women's Day theme, gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, with Guyana's high risk for natural hazards, in order to build forward better, the importance of developing a responsive social protection system able to cope with the increased demands placed on it and to support people wherever they may be impacted by shocks cannot be underestimated. Both for Guyana and globally, examples of fair social protection systems include equity or parental leave, such as establishing paternity leave in tandem with existing maternity leave policies, looking at affordable and universal child care and care subsidies for single mothers at or below the poverty line, already receiving public assistance benefits, as well as working parents in the form of reverse income tax claims or partial subsidies to defray private sector child care costs. Collectively, these are just a few people needed to positively transform our region's social protection systems to be fairer and intrinsically gender responsive. Only then can we truly move forward with more gender responsive social benefits for all. UN Women remain steadfast in our commitment to advocate for and share our technical support with the government of Guyana and civil society and across the Caribbean to mitigate both the socio-economic, mental, cultural, and institutional roadblocks that sometimes a lack of social protection presents to gender equality, especially for women. And it's not just a lack of social protection, a lack of gender responsive and shock responsive social protection. We continue to collaborate with colleagues such as UNICEF, WFP, and our colleagues at UNDP to really work to provide that kind of technical support to the government of Guyana in the way in which we've been doing it to governments across the Eastern Caribbean and Jamaica. The arc of any country's true sustainable development involves full and free participation of women, men, girls, and boys in every stage of society. The change we seek in the future. As we look forward, let us join together to mitigate climate change's pervasiveness, both from the outlook of protecting our one shared beautiful Caribbean and providing more integrated social protection and benefits that support gender equality and uplift women. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
We should really work hard to protect this place before we lost it.
Okay, thank you. I hope you were able to hear it. It sounded good on our end, but I know somebody, Jennifer, said that you're getting a little bit of feedback, and I hope that that did not dissuade you from hearing the content of her message. If you can put in the chat whether or not that was okay. If not, I'll do a synopsis. Okay. All right. So that's it for our two main speakers, but I want to put something in your ear for a bit. UN Women has a document called Towards a Gender Responsive Social Protection Strategy. It's a 4-step checklist, and it offers guidance with respect to mainstreaming gender into the national social protection strategies, and it comes in 4 steps. It asks, number 1, that you define the overarching framework for strategy, that you identify gender-specific risks and vulnerabilities. And when you're designing programs and policies, they should be done with a gender perspective. And fourth and finally, of course, You have to develop monitoring, evaluation, and accountability mechanisms to ensure that the framework does what is requested of it. When I was doing research for this meeting this evening, I came across an article written by Therese Turner Jones, who is the general manager for the Caribbean Country Group for the CCB, and she has operations, of course, in Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, and Suriname. She wrote an article about the hard facts of gender equality in the Caribbean. And she starts out with a story. It's a bit fictitious, but I think you can get the gist of it. And it says that Trisha loves math and science, and she's always excelled in them. And she's completing her final year of university. And because she's a top student, at least 2 of the region's premier financial institutions are hoping to hire her as a security software developer. As she navigates the transition to the world of work, Trisha is confident in herself and her abilities. She's ready to take on the challenges of the young Caribbean woman working in tech. But in many of the countries in the Anglophone Caribbean, the life of a woman like Trisha, with data from the University of the West Indies, says that for the last 3 years, the university puts out female students at more than 65%, yet Caribbean women only make between 60 and 70% for every dollar that a man makes. Protections against pay discrimination vary widely across the region. And according to the WB Women Business and the Law Report 2020, scores for the Caribbean range from 7 to 75% out of 100. And the reason this article was interesting to me is that Guyana was the exception, and we score 100% with a legal framework that establishes equal pay for women and men and no constraints on a woman's decision to work or where she chooses to do so. Trisha is likely to have 2 children with the average fertility rate of the Anglophone Caribbean. Maternity leave and not parental leave, which is available to both parents, means that the burden for caring for those children falls mainly to Trisha. She is likely to take the maximum maternity leave allowed, and coupled with her vacation time, that should take, that her vacation time would amount to about 3 weeks per year, which is the average for the Caribbean. She will return to work in 3 months. Her husband, on the other hand, if he makes use of his vacation time, which is also 3 weeks, that's all he can contribute to this process. And so Trisha will be sleep deprived and stressed out, and she will have to rely on her mother's support because her husband will not benefit from paternity leave. Of course, there are very few workplaces in the Caribbean that are legally bound to provide for 14 weeks of maternity leave and even less for paid maternal leave. Paternity leave, on the other hand, which has shown to increase fathers' participation in child rearing duties and participating in their children's most influential development years, is not a done thing here. Most Caribbean countries, as you know, have not enacted paternity leave. And the longest maternity leave benefit in the Caribbean is offered in Trinidad and Tobago and Belize. When you compare this to what is being offered in developed states like the UK and Canada, they give between 33 and 30 weeks. So the thing that we need to ask ourselves, I think, this evening is, are we doing enough in terms of our social benefits? And if we're not doing enough, what more can we do that would be innovative and impactful for the life ahead, because I mean, if we're having this discussion now, clearly it's not going to kick in now. But we are thinking about the future, maybe within the next 5 years, what our frameworks could be, and how would it look given our new dispensation as a country with quite a good economic growth rate. I want to pass the mic over to Ms. Chandapal for her comments before I open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Renata. This is a very interesting topic that we are discussing here today. And
I'm not hearing you.
Are you not
Okay,
hearing?
you're good. You're good to go.
Great. I said this topic that we're discussing today is a very interesting one. And firstly, let me congratulate the representative from the UN Women. I've had difficulty initially to hear her, and I hope that we can get a copy of her speech, Renata, if that is possible in some way. If we can forward it to all those who are participating in the discussion here today. As was stated by Renata, this is an issue that we have to start the discourse on, because the Commission has over the years been talking about paternity leave. It is something that we have talked about, and we have to keep talking about it. I guess once the situation improves in the country, we will have to ensure that these are issues that, you know, we can follow up on with a view to get decision makers to take some decisions with respect to paternity leave. Additionally, we're also thinking that the maternity leave of 3 months should be, we should take that up to somewhere like 6 months. And if you do not start the lobbying or the advocacy from now on, you will not be able to achieve it in a timely way. Thus, having the discussion as we are presently doing this afternoon, I think it's a positive one. The Commission, as you know, on a yearly basis, we are required to present to the National Assembly recommendations on things that we would have been listening to our stakeholders who have concerns and who have expressed to us that these are their concerns, and we would listen to them. And once we are of the view that these are positive responses, then we will include that in our report. So we're hoping that arising out of today's discussion, there will be some ideas that will emerge that will help us in this regard to make some proposals with respect to social security benefits. In an internal discussion we've had, I may have alluded to it earlier, that in looking at the lifespan of women today, we know that a lot of women are outliving their male spouses or their partners. And oftentimes, you know, the women are unable to take care of their expenditure on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. And it is something that we need to talk about. We do not want to have a situation where people, instead of, you know, living a life that they are comfortable with over time, that suddenly they find themselves in poverty. And I do believe that was why the idea of helping people with some subsidy for water and electricity emerged, because at least it's a small, it's not a big thing, but it is something I think that is useful to help people take care of their bills. But as our country develops, I'm hoping that, and probably as we say in another 5 years or thereabouts, we may be able to see some improvements, whether it's in the NIS benefits, in the old age pension, and stuff like that. It is something that we need to lobby for. as well as to take the, I would say, the cost for water and electricity, take it a little bit higher than it is presently with the help. And there may be novel ideas. I mean, Ms. Khan spoke to a lot of things that are already in the pipeline that we've been doing over the years in Guyana. Though we may call them small, at least there is something that is being done. But we have to think now for the future and what it is we would like to recommend to policymakers in terms of where we would like to see the social benefits going. We know that, for example, in the case of a funeral expenditure, it is not adequate, or even to have your spectacles and all of that. It's not enough, or to have your, you know, even let us say if widows and orphans, even that to my mind is inadequate. And there is need to have a relook at all of these things. And I do believe the time has come when we need to have an actuary done of the social benefits or that we have presently, to see where it is and what it is we can do for the future. I am mindful of the fact that when we talk about these sustainable benefits that you want to have over time, there are certain rules, and I know Ms. Lord is with us, and I'm sure she will have something to say about this, that you cannot just increase benefits like that. You have to sustain everything that people are getting at the present time. And therefore it has to be done in a certain way to help them to sustain it. So I'm not an economist, and I am a woman activist, and I am lobbying for things to help our people out there. But I'm sure those who are au fait with the economics of all of this perhaps will be able to look at what we are propagating and to see how relevant some of these ideas are to our people at the moment. So I do believe the discussion will be useful for us, and the topic itself, as I said, is something that we don't really talk about, and it's important to bring some of these issues out in the fore so that people can start discussing them. We may not be able to come up with all the answers at this point in time, but certainly we can begin the process of talking, and hopefully as we proceed and have some more in-depth discussion, we may come up with some novel ideas as to how we can help our people. I know there is a program through the Ministry of Housing whereby people who are building their homes and they need help are getting some help. All of these things are good. So when we talk about thinking out of the box, we have to think about programs such as these that can be beneficial to the senior citizens, especially to people who would have given useful time of their life to working in any field, whether it's a public service or whichever field they are working. They need to have something as they get older in which they can look up to. First world countries, they have certain benefits. I know 401k and there are certain benefits they get, but we cannot compare ourselves to those first world countries. We still have a far way to go. But sure enough, I do believe there is a will, and we need to help propagate this idea that we need to start thinking about social benefits so that our people, as they get older, they will be able to have something that can help them to sustain a kind of standard of living. We don't want them to end up in poverty and all of that. So I believe the discussion thus far is important for us. And I am hoping that the information that is available out there, we can use it and perhaps make some recommendations, but we haven't started the dialogue as yet. So I'm hoping that in the course of the dialogue, more innovative ideas will emerge, and it will help us in the commission to, having listened to you, we also have all our stakeholders that we usually listen to. For example, our Access to Justice program takes us to all the regions of Guyana, and certainly this can be one such discussion that we will take to our stakeholders to hear what they have to say, so that we can all come up with some positive ideas and so on. So like, yes, I've seen Vidyartha, yes, transportation to help senior citizens, that is something that is very useful to help the children and so on. All these are ways in which you can help them. So if we do the collective thinking as we're doing right now, I'm sure we will come up with lots of positive ideas in terms of what we can do for our people and to help them in their social security benefits. Anyway, enough of me, Renata, and let me pass the virtual mic over to you back, and let some of our participants have their say. But you will need to have your say as well, Renata. We are awaiting that.
Yes, I am. So Vidya, I read your comment, and I do think that we need to find a mechanism whereby we can value women's unpaid work or unpaid work in general. Because of course we're looking for a new paradigm, one where everybody is equal and has equity. So you're raising the question of unpaid work and persons who are 65, who are not yet 65, who are doing work and they're not working outside of the home, so they're not collecting a salary or a wage on a weekly or monthly basis. And I did float this idea years back, like when we were now embarking on our Access to Justice and people were talking about them not being able to access NIS benefits, is that there must be a mechanism whereby as long as a person is born in Guyana, you take their ID card number, or there must be a registration process whereby they can be put into the NIS system. And if the person attains adulthood and they're not working, that a certain benefit can be accrued for them. Or we have an amount, a minimum amount at least, whereby if it's the wife that's not working outside of the home, but she is doing work in the home, that her husband must be paying her NIS for her at a particular rate. And that should be mandatory, so that when she attains the age of 65, she has something in her account that she can then extract. I'm sure the actuaries will have something to say about that, but I do think that unless we start somewhere, persons are going to attain that age and not be able to withdraw anything from NIS when they most need it, because they still have expenses, because once you have life, you have expenses. Certainly being able to afford transportation or being able to offer transportation to the elderly is something that can be looked at. These are things that have been done in other countries. And so we need to find a mechanism whereby that is done. I know we're offering, for instance, bus transportation to school children in rural areas. Once a child is in school, those buses could now be employed for to transport the elderly around to do their errands or, wherever they may wish to go. And that's something that can be done. It's just a matter of redirecting the bus driver to doing something else. On the issue of maternity leave, we are pushing now for, the discussions have been happening in the Caribbean with respect to that, and persons are now pushing for paternity leave or parental leave, whereby either parent can have leave, not only in the case of childbirth, but also in cases where a child will need care and they need somebody to be with them, either parent should be eligible to take parental leave. That's a discussion that has to happen not only with the private sector, but also with government, to see whether or not whether or not, how this can be accommodated. We, of course, and Tony Broadbent talked about this, is that our social benefit systems need to be within a framework, and we have to decide, for instance, who should we be, well, not who should be, but what should be catered for under this, the social benefits framework. And we are being asked to identify and assess the gendered life course risks relevant to the national context. And so things like child or early marriages, are there any barriers to education? Are there maternity-related health risks? Are there maternity-related income risks? What is the impact of teenage pregnancy, single motherhood, widowhood-related risks, and of course the old age income risk, whereby when you attain a certain age, ageism kicks in and you're no longer considered by society as being eligible or fit for work, as it were. And so these are things that we have to consider. I mean, right now, at least during COVID, we saw that the cash grant system was employed a lot, along with the hamper system. And what COVID taught us is that flexi time could be a real part of our world of work, and that persons can be, certainly in the private sector, as productive from home as they are at their desks in the office. A number of companies, Google and so forth, have decided that they won't be returning to the office work, as it were. They will maintain their flexi work program where the employees can choose to work from home. The benefit, of course, to companies is that you have to pay less money in rent and expenditures. So, and the benefit to the employees is that you are at home, you tend to be more productive, and you're also with your family in case of something happening onto work. But I want to throw the floor open for questions, so please indicate. Halima,
May
did
I?
you want to say something? Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon or good evening, more so. My question to Commissioner Bibi Khan, does the current structure make it feasible for, let us say, the benefit, we're talking about the paternity leave. We know maternity leave has always been there, but given the fact that Women and Gender have recommended paternity leave, do we have the structure to actually accommodate such? Should a man want to apply, or do we need to have robust legislation that will actually make that a reality? I thank you.
I take it that is all that you would have wanted to say, or I don't know if you have gone off. Nicole?
I am right here. I haven't
Okay.
gone anywhere.
Okay, this structure, as you're saying, I guess you're talking about the law. As the law exists presently, there is no paternity leave and extension than what is there right now, 13 weeks of benefit. And of course, there is another 13 extension if the woman have complications after giving birth. But there is nothing I can say at this point in time that I know of for paternity leave. The law do not exist for that currently.
Thank you.
I would like to say this. We have been talking about paternity leave, and way back when this commission would have started, I know I was the one who did the document on it for the commission. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, the document and the discussions just end up as discussion. And there was never a recommendation, I think, that came out of it to Parliament. It just remained there. What we can do at this point in time is take up the challenge again. Thank you.
In the early days, we did make a recommendation for parental leave, and I think it was former Minister Paula Lawrence who had actually spoken about it, in that she was agreeing with it. She also agreed with the fact that maternity leave should be extended to the length of time it's recommended for breastfeeding. But again, this was talk, and nothing concrete came out of it except to say that they were favorable to the ideas.
Yeah, but the actuaries wouldn't say that.
Right. So I mean,
Um,
everything here, it's one thing for us to say this is what we'd like to recommend, but the other side of the conversation is how do we pay for it?
Definitely.
And generally, if NIS is to give you more benefits, it means they need more in contributions.
Can I ask Mrs. Chanda Paul if she intends to lobby now for there to be strategic change as Commissioner Khan as it relates to paternity leave, because Women Agenda have already made the recommendation to Parliament. So now we lobby for there to be the structure, the infrastructure to support such.
Well, it is usually what we do. Once our stakeholders are making recommendations for certain things, we always include them in our report to Parliament with the recommendations, and paternity leave is there. We have to keep working, we have to keep lobbying, we have to keep advocating for these things. And that is why today's discussion was intended to start the awareness. That's why we have chosen this topic, because it is something that you need to start talking about, getting others to buy into it. Similarly, the way we start talking about domestic violence, today everybody speaks about violence. So you have to start the lobby and hope that others will get involved. Private sector, trade unions, government, there are three partners in this whole thing, and they all have to buy in so that we can begin the discourse, we can move towards legislation. And the important point that Renata has made, somebody has to pay for it, where the money will come from. And also we have to sustain whatever benefits that are there. You don't want to lose them. You want to improve them, and you want to have them continuously.
Okay, so just before I go to you, Vanda, I saw that Vidya said he's found an article purportedly coming from the Public Service Credit Union, which says that the head of it, the IMC, Trevor Ben, is saying that he is willing, or they're willing, to grant 1 month paternity leave. But there are some
They
conditions.
actually put that as part of their collective labor agreement. So
Right.
already you have a case in Guyana where one entity is doing that for their and they have the framework. So I mean, I think when
Right.
we heard Ms. Khan say there might not have been anything, at least you have an example, or you already have a case. So now you have this is something that the Gender Equality Commission might want to learn more about, to advocate, to show that it is happening already,
Right.
and it might, and there might be, and they are concerned because of course there are all kinds of things about the way in which, because Mark can come 20 times, how many times?
Well, that's what they said. They must have a birth certificate. The persons must be in a
Right.
stable relationship. So
Right.
there are conditions.
I remember we had this foolishness too, because I think even the maternity leave is there. Some places there's some craziness where you can only have so many children. You're only
Correct.
entitled, there's time frame and all of that. So even then and all, it isn't quite as liberal as we think it is, right? There's
True.
all kinds of
Right.
issues still, right?
Okay, so let me get Vanda in here and Rishma,
No,
I
before Vanda,
see.
let me say this. I'm not aware that there is something on the maternity, especially at NIS, with how many children. Don't know about that
Okay,
one.
so that's
Sorry.
good.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. My mistake. It's not about how many children, but I think it's in the I mean, isn't there not maybe not sorry not NIS, but I think it's this issue in some workplaces where we had the issue about when, like if you can get it, say every 15 months, if you get children, um, wasn't there an issue with the city council? Nicole, you can remember, Commissioner Cole, remember that issue with the city council? Within the
Prob-
municipal workers, the woman couldn't get, there was some crazy thing within
They
the
didn't,
municipal
I
worker.
think, yeah, they'd gotten
It's
pregnant
not
before. I think they had enough
the security
contributions for
services.
NIS.
May I butt in? The security services, they're not encouraging women to get children because it's affecting them and whatever they have to do.
Right,
I
so
know,
that's a
I
general
know,
issue,
that
right.
one, but like I said, is the
Right.
private sector and that is an encouragement. It's no way in the laws of Guyana.
Okay, so before I take anybody else, can we listen, hear Vanda, and then we will go to Rishma. Vanda, floor is yours.
Hi, I see Lorraine Lord is up. Is she going before me?
No, you're going before her. Vanda, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I saw the other lady's name. Yes, Renata, so thank you. And thanks to Halima and those others who presented and to Vidya's comments. So just to say that, you know, we are now in 2022. We have a couple more years before Agenda 2030, which is supposed to be the sustainable agenda for the rest of the world that Guyana was one of the first to sign, is coming up. And to be honest, I am really tired hearing about these little incremental this and a little 2 cents here and a 5 cents here. I think it's ridiculous. To me, sadly, all of the social benefits that exist now in Guyana are still at poverty wage level. It's not increasing really the sustaining well-being of women. Women are the caregivers. And to me, until you address that fundamental scope of work that all women do, that sustains the entire labor market, that sustains the entire world at large, we're just going to be sort of spinning in mud. And years ago, Women and Gender Equality lobbied hard. We lobbied Parliament. We had experts come down and address Parliament in a number of seminars. Every year, we have very similar, strongly worded recommendations, evidence-based as to why, for the people in Parliament to do legislation that would allow Guyana to progress forward when it comes to women's rights and to gender equality. So at some point, we lobbied for these gender budgets. I believe it is something that we have to continuously consider. And we need all the voices that we can muster to ensure that the Ministry of Finance and Parliament listen and do what needs to be done for Guyana. My sister Indra, chair of WGEC, you keep asking where the money coming from. Well, Guyana is now the newest, richest source of oil in the whole wide world. The amount of revenues, if you've been listening to some of the other panels by Morey House and other civil society organizations, the amount of monies, obviously the Texas and ExxonMobil and so on will be garnering is phenomenal. We are getting a pittance of it, but the pittance we are getting is still larger than anything we have received before from natural resources. The oil and gas belongs to us Guyanese, 51% of whom are women. And women have to understand we own this oil. And these oil revenues, I've always said this, 50% of all the oil revenues should go towards bolstering the quality of life of women who sustain all of us here in Guyana at all levels. And coming back to the care work, I'm sorry we didn't have a panelist now that could speak about the care work and the rightful benefits that should come from that. And finally, Renata, yes, I'm tired of us not being bold enough. Women and gender equality are always under the radar. The press does not give us any publicity and all of that, but we know how hard we have worked and how innovative some of our recommendations have been. Number one, what we now have in Parliament, frankly, is a disgrace. I don't know when last a proper legislation was passed that was gender related. Actually, we had the amendment to the medical termination bill a couple of years back. And I don't think there's been anything ever since. And I do believe we need to be bold. Let us stop talking about 2 cents and 3 cents and a little pittance here and there and incremental this and incremental that. It is just not enough. We need to really speak more boldly. We have to find some way of intervening in Parliament because frankly, it is not doing its work. They spend all the time quarreling and trading insults. And we know some of the terrible insults that have recently been bandied about in Parliament. So I, for one, have lost faith I kind of lost faith in it. But as women in Guyana, we have to raise our voices loud and clear. And I believe it is time to have some kind of appropriate and impactful intervention by us women in Parliament and to speak truth to power. Thank you very much. And thanks, Renata and team for this interesting presentation.
Thank you. Before we go to Rishma, I'm sorry, Lorraine, did you wish to say something?
Actually, I was just going to support a point that was made by Vidya, and that is many organizations, indeed, the way their policies are worded, they let you know up front, you have a limitation on the number of children, when you can have them, and so on. So I was just going to add to his comments in that regard.
Okay, thank you. So Rishma, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. First, let me say thank you for having me join in this discussion that is most critical and relevant. So far, this session has been quite informative. I've learned a lot. I would just like to give my 2 cents. Well, I'm an economist, so I'm not really skilled in the gender issue. I would like to continue on what Ms. van der Radzik, yes, as she was saying regarding, sorry, I don't know if you could see a little. Yes, regarding the issue of transferring, so that was one of something I would like to speak on in terms of transferring our country's wealth for social protection benefits, especially for women, because they're the most disadvantaged in many countries and in this area. So take, for instance, where all money is going, it is going to our sovereign wealth fund. I guess you know it as the natural resource fund. However, I'm thinking, well, it is supposed, like most countries have done, like in African countries and in Norway and so forth, where they categorize a portion of the sovereign wealth fund money that goes for social protection purposes. There are many sorts of social protection. We have very few, and we need to, as Miss Chandrapal had said, is that we need more new ideas, more new social protection services and programs, and there are many. they are well documented and being experimented all over the world. And if there's anything, we could seek assistance. If we can't do it on our own, we could seek assistance from the international organization, such as I have it here, I guess you all know of them, the Social Protection Interagency Cooperation Board. They're a collaborative group by the United Nations. No, a group that includes development agencies such as United Nations, specialized agencies, and so forth. Yes. So when you have a collaborative effort that's working to help build these programs, and you could actually fight for them in Parliament and to have them pass, so probably there are bigger portions we could get from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. What we need to do in Guyana is that, yes, we need to do the research to see what will work for Guyana. But firstly, we need to have very cooperative interagency meetings, like meetings and collaboration, working all the time together, such as with your organization and with the Ministry of Human Services and Social Protection and so forth. When you have that strong collaborative effort, you can be able to fight for these these benefits stronger and lobby for them. And the bigger voice that you have, they more likely to be able to listen to you and see what are the benefits. And if you're backed by certain prominent international agencies, development agencies, you will get a lot of funding, and it could push for a lot. And my belief is that social protection doesn't start when you're old. It is something that should be done throughout the life cycle of the person. Yes, women are the most at disadvantage in terms of education, formal employment, and so forth, and building the psyche of the women, the motivational spirit of the women. These are all programs and all programs that we could institute from the very young age of the girl child. So all our social protection programs should be starting from small to throughout the life cycle of the child, of the girl, or everyone, because it benefits not only the man or the woman, it benefits everyone. And well, that's my 2 cents. If you would like to ask me more questions, I'll be gladly able to answer. Thank you.
I do actually want to ask you a question because, of course, you said you're an economist. In Guyana, there's something called the Fiscal Transfer Bill, which supposed to provide a mechanism whereby if a country, if a town, a community, for instance, is making money or they're contributing royalties to the national treasury, they're supposed to be able to retrieve a portion of that commensurate with what they've contributed to the national treasury. Could you speak on that?
No, in terms of the portion that they could extract for social protection, I am not, I don't have that information. But if you have those sit-down meetings with people from the Ministry of Finance, they have a board that actually governs the Sovereign Wealth Fund. They'll be able to tell you. Okay.
No, but this is not necessarily going toward talking to about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But my understanding, and I forget what it is, it's the Fiscal Transfers Bill, which, for instance, let's take Region 7 that produces a lot of gold and diamonds. That commodity is then sold and the royalties are paid into the national treasury. That region now is supposed to get, as part of its budget, monies back as a result of how much they're, which is a portion of how much they've contributed to the national treasuries to spur development, to improve their social well-being in that region. Of course, they have to ask for it.
Yes, certainly. And as I think Ms. Franjapal had mentioned, is that it cannot be done overnight. There is a lot of feasibility testing that they will have to do for it to make sure that the money is not wasted and that these things are delivered in the most effective and efficient manner. So, you know, there is no stealing, nobody is wrong the program or trying to manipulate the program.
Mhm. And I brought that up too because I think Vidya had raised the point of rural versus urban, and that persons who are further away from urban centers tend to have more difficulty accessing
Yes.
services, getting access, of course, as a result to their social benefits. And this is partly because the offices responsible for delivering these services are not necessarily always in the communities that they need to be in.
Yes. So,
And also, I mean,
sorry.
the service in town is bad, so imagine the service out of town.
Yes. So I actually explored how do you transfer to people in remote areas. I actually did some reading and research on that. So yes, we'll have to have a lot of infrastructural changes and also educational changes and financial access. So take, for instance, in Africa, many countries in Africa that has these social welfare programs or transfer programs to their citizens, they have developed where each and every citizen should have access to an ID with a barcode that could be you know, identified easily. Also, each person should have a bank account. And so this requires countrywide setup. It will entail a lot of investment, initial investment, but it will be beneficial and long lasting throughout, because the money is not here for a short time. It will be here for a long time. So it has to be done in the most efficient manner. And these are stuff they need to start lobbying for right away. The country needs a lot of structural development.
Thank you. And what I hear from you is also this improving our social benefits framework means an increase in employment because of the attendant things that you have to do with it.
Most definitely. And it has to be disaggregated across the country.
I want to read a comment from Karen Cummings, but actually I'm going to give her, Karen, would you like to take the floor and make your comments, or would you like me to read them?
No, it's okay. I just want to congratulate you for this meeting. I mean, first time I'm being part of this. Happy New Year for those who I've seen before, but I'm enjoying it. So I think I just share my comments there, but I want to be more observation and listening in. As anything jumps out of me, I will share, but it's okay. You can probably read it as you're on the floor.
Right, will do. And we thank you for your support. So she says that she will bring the matter to the Forter Social Services Committee in Parliament, and we'll certainly have a discourse on NIS and as to how the structure would look like. And in an oil-rich country with a high projected growth, she believes that the enactment of paternity leave is doable. She also says that we need to narrow the gap on with gender equality, and we should empower our women, increase our educational attainment, and create more jobs to decrease poverty. And there must be more active participation of women in the labor market, and we must strive to empower our women, improving their self-esteem and also have their sense of citizenship. We must all have social recovery. Thank you.
Can I,
So,
Renata, can I intervene?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. I just wanted to say that Vidya is very good, I must say. He's found the bill. So it's the Fiscal Transfers Bill of 2012.
Okay, thank you very much, Renata. I just wanted to respond to something that Vidyartha had said. When he referred to the difficulties of people living in rural and hinterland communities. And I just want to bring to the attention of our participants here that the Women and Gender Equality Commission had embarked on we had Access to Justice program in which we went to the different regions of the country and listened to the people. And arising out of that program that we had, we then made recommendations for a strategic plan to include the chapter. We wanted to mainstream social justice in our 5-year strategic plan, because we recognize that the people who are living in far-flung communities, rural hinterland, riverine, the difficulties they have in accessing all kinds of facilities. And therefore, there is that need to narrow the gap however you want to do that, as quickly as possible, but it is something that has to be done. And today we're talking about social benefits. Think about the NIS and the challenges people are having to go get their documentations. And we had talked a long time ago that anyone could have used their NIS card and go in the system to ensure that they can see all their benefits and things like that. Those are things that we still need to get done. It is happening, but I don't think oftentimes the information is correct. You have to keep doing it over and over for them to, because there are lots of gaps in people payments to the NIS, and that is something that we need to do. So definitely the divide that we have presently in terms of facilities for far-flung hinterland rural communities are all things that as a country we need to focus on. So I just wanted to say that to our participants, because we have started that discourse a while ago. Thank you.
Okay. So Rishma, I'm sure you've seen Vidya's comment with respect to UG and their need to ensure that gender is mainstreamed in all of their programs. For those of you who don't know, the commission was instrumental in the initiating what is known as the Institute for Gender Studies at the University of Guyana. And one of the purposes for doing that is so that gender could be taught in every faculty at the university.
Well, that's good. That's very good initiative.
Right.
Yes.
So it's still a work in progress, but I understand that they're doing some work, and especially through the Spotlight program, there are a number of programs that they're offering now to students and members of the public to get them more au fait with what is gender. And the impact that gender has. And as you can see, when we look at things like social benefits, we need to use a gender lens, because it's not a one size that fits all. And there are different communities of need, and each of those communities have special considerations that need to be made. Yes, so Vidya, that bill is, even though it's there, and that's one of the things it's supposed to do, it's been largely ignored. And it's one of those things that needs to come to it needs to come under the limelight again, because different regions contribute differently to our national coffers. But most of the money, it tends to be spent in Region 4. Granted, Region 4 has the most, is the most populous, but when you travel to the outlying regions, given what they're contributing, it seems to be a disconnect with the rate of development. I was involved in a group that was pushing for a constitutional reform. And I know that's a subject that makes people very uncomfortable. But that's one of the things that we were looking at, is how do we use the Constitution to ensure that there is equity for all, and to ensure that, even though it's enshrined in certain acts in the Constitution, certain other parts don't make it so equitable. Okay, floor is open again.
Pandan Vidyartha.
Yes, okay, thanks, Samindra. So Well, just to say that constitutional reform is not an option. It's an essential item for Guyana. We're not going to get anywhere without it. Look at our elections madness. I was shocked actually that even before we had the elections in 2020, in 2015 and in 2020, that we had not yet enacted constitutional reform. This is long standing. I was part, I think Indra might have been part long ago in 2000, between 2001 and 2003, 2003, there was a really excellent, process that was held in Guyana, excellent. And however, when it came to Parliament in 2003, both parties boiled it down to the lowest gravy possible, unfortunately. But some of the recommendations that came out of that commission were just so far reaching. And I followed that thing from literally from Berbice still down to Essequibo. And you heard regular people stand up and speak from the villages and from the communities, just brilliant. And they were all combined. I know Roxanne George, myself, Tota Mangar and Daye, we all worked on the production of the report with the recommendations. That was then. So to be honest, that report still exists and there's a lot in there. So all these new, like Renata's thing is new, and some of us have been involved. I've been involved in 5 sets of electoral reform initiatives, right? I'm glad that you're on this new one here, but there's a whole heap of information that already exists. And maybe this is something, again, that research is necessary for, where we have someone just take this on, compile all of those recommendations, past and present. And let's see if maybe again with WGC and our other NGO colleagues. So I think civil society actually always leads these processes, to be honest, and see where we can go with that. But Indra, I wanted to just share a really interesting community-based benefit sharing example. So in Brazil, just not too far from us, and where they have the, they have the big Amazon forest that we share of the Amazon too. And they initiated something called Bolsa Familia, which loosely translates the family package. And how it works is that if the community is living in the Amazon near forests, they pledge, the village or the community signs a pledge to say that they will help to monitor and sustain the forest in their backyard or in their community. It doesn't mean that you cannot use the forest, but you can use it for timber and non-forest timber products sustainably. And they have the experts and the people and the foresters who do all of that, but the community plays an active part. And in return, every month, they receive money. They receive a benefit in the forms of a cash. How does it work? What I love about it is the women are the guardians of the Bolsa Familia. So like a small card called Bolsa Familia, something like an ATM card, is issued to the women in the community of the families that have signed the pledge. And every month the women can go with their card. I'm not sure if it's an ATM or a special kind of cash dispenser, but they go to this place with their card and they insert it and they receive this cash in hand every month. And that is also monitored by an NGO, a local NGO. So the whole thing is monitored and assessed, and they also evaluate, I think it's every 2 years by a third party. Sometimes it's these NGOs from abroad like IIED and so on. And it is shown that just having that, it's not a lot of money. The women, the community say they need more. I think it was recently increased. But having that money in the hands of the women of the family who can then use it for the simple things, the children's education, some transportation, if you have an emergency medically or things like that. And there's a whole way in which it is used. But in addition to the actual cash in hand through the Bolsa Familia card, you also get projects for your communities, which are youth-led, women-led, and family-led. So you have these entrepreneurial kind of forest-based or community-based income generation projects. Then the sort of like something like the NDC, but I think it's better than that. The kind of community policy, the people who look after the community, like the council or so on, they get an annual budget out of this same Bolsa Familia pledge. And then there's another thing, I think there's an education scholarship annually as well for each of the various communities that have pledged to work on this. And it seems to me something that is so doable. It's proven to work. It has 5 different components to it, one of which is the actual card that the women get a cash in hand every month and so forth. We have our forests in Guyana and we have our other ecosystems. It doesn't have to stop with forests. But imagine people in Pokwani and in Ituni and those places where they have forests. And those communities and those women there can benefit from this kind of thing. I just really would love to see it pioneered in Guyana. We can just go across the border and see how it is working there. As I said, there are endless reports, international reports that have evaluated this Bolsa Familia. And now that we have REDD+, and now that we have famous LCDS 2030 being rolled out and all the rest of it in our forests, once again becoming so important to us, I think it's really very well worth doing. So we don't have to just wait on these slow coach systems that don't work to get a little pittance of social benefits, but we can actually take it to another level and put these resources and their benefits into our hands, and particularly the hands of women at community level. Thank you.
Vidyartha wants to speak. Vidya, please go.
I'm so sorry about that. No, that's okay.
No, you don't wish to speak?
No. Sorry about that.
We've been getting all that information, very useful from
So,
Vidya.
I'll just say what is happening is that, there's so many things we're learning tonight. That this is something that's nice with Zoom. I mean, this thing that Renata talked about, the fiscal transfers action. So I wonder if any of us knew about that.
I know about
That
it.
exists. I mean, Mr. Sharpa, you know about it, but I mean,
Yeah.
like, I think from the whole thing of the local, when you're starting with local government and so on, it's
Yeah, it started then.
right. And, so these are things which people should be monitoring, because it has these formulas and so on. So yeah, so all these different things. So as people talk, you kind of like Google and see. That's how I found the Public Service Credit Union. No, the thing with the paternity leave,
that's
I mean,
really good to know.
we already have, through the labor agreement. I mean, that is something that is really interesting. That just as Lorraine said, how companies find ways to put in the policy what is against the law. Not what is illegal. Yes, apparently they find ways to make. That was an issue, as Lorraine said. There's all these interesting unwritten rules and policies, and so to circumvent. But at the same time, people are finding ways to be progressive. So I'm glad that the Public Service Credit Union, that's a nice example to highlight. Yeah.
Yes, but
Certainly
Vidya, the thing is, and Renata, the thing is, I've never heard of the fiscal transfer bill, so maybe it's not even working. Maybe we have dead legislation as well. Well, how come we don't know anything about it?
It started with
the
law. It's a law.
If I can say, sometimes the laws
Part of
don't
the Constitution.
Sometimes they're dead laws, and I think that what we need is some serious third-party review of legislation in Guyana. What is working and what is not, and why is it not working? When I mean working, I don't mean this pooba, it there, but it not there kind of thing. But how robust is it? How many people are benefiting from it every day, every month, who is benefiting? What is the actual amount that is put into the fiscal, whatever it is, every year for transfers through Ministry of Finance? Who is benefiting and who is not? Why, and so on. Because
we have an MP in our midst, and so we'll set her a task.
All right,
Having these
Vanda.
things, no, because you see, Indra, this is where again we have to really make a shake up in Parliament.
Well,
They enact
first thing
legislation.
you need
How
to do
much of
is
it, excuse me, how
get a
much of
copy
the
of the bill.
legislation that is passed is being monitored? Do we actually receive every year citizens' reports about how the legislation, especially in the topic we're talking about, social protection, social benefits? You know, these are things that, as I said, and I'm going to end with this, we need to be bolder. We must not be satisfied with this slow coach, the system ain't working, the this and that, we're tired of it. This is 2022, and we have to just really wake up and shake up. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Vanda. Lorraine, I noticed you put a comment in that many persons are denied benefits because of the gaps in the payments, and sometimes it's difficult to prove or disprove. I must say that the NIS, and this is partly due to COVID, has done some technological, they've used technology to enhance their operations a bit more. You can check your balances online, or not your balances, your contributions online. And one person that I know benefited from the record keeping is that he thought he only had a certain amount of contributions, and the NIS was able to find even more contributions. So it meant, because he was kind of concerned, he's getting on in age, and he thought that he would not be able to pay into the system sufficient contributions, so that by the time he reached his glorious age of 65, that he would be without NIS. But they managed to find additional payments, so much so that he has more than sufficient time to pay up so that he can gain his benefits when he becomes of age.
60.
The
Well,
other
if I
thing
could,
that
if
they're
I could
doing is
add to that, then yeah, if I could
sorry,
add
hang
to
on.
that.
One more thing.
Okay.
So instead of going into, this life certificate thing where you have to go in, they're gonna call you on WhatsApp, and has to be a video call so they can see you and see that you're talking, and then that becomes your life certificate. So I thought that was really a good use of technology for that purpose. But go ahead.
Right. Indeed, the record keeping has improved. They have made changes. But my point is that there are still persons who, when they go to receive their benefits, would be told that, we can't find your contributions when you were at this employer, or so on. And because of the age of the persons and the time that has elapsed, it's difficult for them to disprove what the NIS is saying. Now, I have no doubt that the organization is making efforts to improve, but I just thought I should highlight that not all persons are benefiting from that. I am in contact with a lot of persons who've had that sad experience, and there's nothing that they could do right now.
Okay. Maybe we should have a meeting with NIS on these particular individuals, as the minister is going around the country having similar meetings. We should arrange a meeting with him and them. So thank you for that. All right. So does
May I
anybody
say
else
something?
have a comment? Halima?
Yes, I just noticed some places burned down, so the record's not there. I've heard that too, but to the best of my knowledge, that is not so. What really happened with NIS and their record keeping is that when they transfer from the manual system to the computerized system, there have been discrepancies with names and numbers. And this have caused chaos, because and especially with some names, Indian names, it's spelled differently. And of course, the different spelling at different time, when the employer would have submitted the remittances to NIS, and that is some of the employers, of course, some did not submit, but those that submit, one time, take my name for example, they spell my name Haliema, one time Haleema, Halima, and it is the same Halima Khan. So according to the computer, it's 3 or 4 different persons there right away. So they have to go back, they have to verify that yes, is the Haliema, all these contributions. And of course, it's for different years, different period of time and that kind of thing. So it takes time, but the records are there. It's just that you have to associate the records with the number. Sometimes the person number is a B12 and somebody was writing, the clerk at the time, they write B21. So right away, there is another discrepancy. Who this thing actually belonged to? B12 and the rest of numbers, or the B21? So it's not like anything burned down, it's there.
So I guess you're saying that it needs some patience, a sturdy
Yeah,
constitution.
but sometimes it take a long time and people are frustrated. And I agree with them. That is why I would encourage persons, don't wait until you're 60 to get the pension and then you start the ball rolling. Start it long before that. So that by the time
Okay.
you're there, the contributions are in order and you just get your payment very quickly.
Okay. Right. So everybody, please check up on your NIS contributions starting tomorrow. All right. I want to thank everybody for their contributions. I do hope that out of this, we can certainly consider social benefits in a new way, in a gendered way, so that everyone is able to access benefits that they're entitled to, and the kind of life that they should have, fulfilled life that they should have under our laws and our constitution. That is in place for them. Tonight has shown us that we need to do some more research. We need to certainly pay attention to the laws that govern us in a lot more detail. Don't wait for somebody else to raise an alarm on it, but certainly be educated about what benefits are due to us under the law, and certainly how our social benefits frameworks can be employed to achieve gender equity. This has certainly been a very interesting discussion, and I really appreciate the time that you have spent here with us. Please do not hesitate to reach out to the Commission. We are here to serve you. We'd love to have your ideas on things that we can do. I certainly have made a note that we should investigate policies, the social policies of the private sector and government institutions with respect to the issue of maternity, because that would be, we can't have policies in 2022 that are violating the rights of any human being. Parvati, it's good to see you. Karen Hall, it's good to see you. Chris, well, I see your names. I don't see your pictures. I don't see your faces, but it's certainly good to have you here. And certainly Christine as well. Ernestine, I'm glad you're able to come in. Emily Dotson, good to have you here. Though I thought I would have heard from you, Emily. This is certainly, I think what tonight also tells me is that this cannot be the last conversation around social benefits. And social benefits does not start or shouldn't only be a consideration when we reach a certain age or stage of life. And that there should be, social benefits starts at the beginning of life and it runs until the end of life. And they have to suit each stage of life. So we need to get our thinking caps on and certainly work with our lawmakers to ensure that Guyanese access the benefits that they deserve, because we are humans just like the rest of the world. So at this break, if there are no other questions or comments, I would really like to say thank you for spending this evening with us and to say Happy International Women's Day. We certainly would like you to consider everything that you do through a gendered lens and to use that power that you resides within you to break the bias. Thank you and good evening to all.
Good evening.
Thanks and bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. It was a very
Thanks,
insightful meeting.
everyone. Bye.
Good meeting.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ernestine.
Thanks, Karen.
Bye
Nice to
bye.
have you on, girl.
Bye.
Karen, nice to have you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Hope
It's
you're
very
keeping
insightful
well.
meeting. Yes, I'll try.
All right.
I got you. Yes, take care.
Bye bye, Renata. Cheer.
All right, and Vidya, it was fabulous having you. We might actually think of employing you as research. All right.
Bye bye, Renata.
Bye-bye.